A Woman's Response to The Rational Male by Rollo Tomassi. Are we on chapter 10 already? We're on chapter 10. That went fast. Okay, chapter 10. Mythology. The myth of the lonely old man. The thing I thought of when I read The Myth of the Lonely Old Man was this thing that I'm noticing where it seems like dating advice for women and dating advice for men is getting flipped around. And either they're taking dating advice for women and acting like it should be universal dating advice. And I would hazard saying that there is not much dating advice that is universal between the two genders. That's not to say it doesn't exist, but it seems like the two genders have different dating advice they should be listening to because of the differences in our windows of fertility, because of differences in a lot of things. And windows of fertility is the first time that I actually looked at it and thought, they're giving men women's dating advice and they're giving women men's dating advice. This can't possibly end well. So then you take that and you apply it to the myth of the lonely old man. And again, it seems to me at least like the dating advice has been flipped over. You know, I think women I think women, and we're probably going to be able to see this very well firsthand as the next couple decades roll around. Women who are my age right now who still haven't found a partner and are desperately trying to find a partner might not find a partner. They might not be able to have kids. They might not be able to have a family. You know, in a couple decades, that's really going to start to eat away at them. Women, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm going to go ahead and say this. This is going to get me in trouble. I don't think a woman is entirely complete until she has a child. And I know many women who have chosen not to have children. Personally, I do believe that a woman is incomplete until she has a child. That doesn't mean she's less or worth less or her life is less meaningful. It means she's incomplete. It means that something is missing. She's got a hole in her life that she has to fill up with something. And some women do that. They don't have children, but they have something that they invest themselves into so fully that, they don't have to really they don't have to feel that emptiness of that missing place in their life as much. Some women can't have kids. That doesn't mean that they're less feminine or less of women or, less valuable. It means that they have a big hole in their life where they wanted to have a kid and no kid is going to be there. What do you fill that hole up with? What do you do with that piece of your life that's missing? So I think when I read The Myth of the Lonely Old Man, I think this is another one of those situations where it really seems to me like they just took our dating advice and switched it around. It's like, let's give men all the dating advice that we've given women all these years and women all the dating advice we've given to men. Women, I don't need a man. Men, you're going to be a lonely old man if you don't settle down with some harpy. Um, you can be a lonely old man if you do settle down with some harpy. Let me say, in the strip clubs, I remember there was this one guy, he came into the strip club, friendly guy, fun guy. He would always bring lots of liquor. And he'd set it out on the table and he'd let the girls drink the liquor. And it was like watching a bunch of hummingbirds in the strip club. These girls would come buzzing up to him and they'd sit down and they'd like kind of drink some of his liquor and then they'd wander off again and then they'd come back and, he didn't have to buy dances with us. He would just sit there with his liquor and he'd chat with the girls while they were drinking and then they'd get up and try to sell a dance or two and make some money for the night and then they come back and sit with him a little bit more and have another shot of liquor. I don't drink, but I found him to be a very entertaining gentleman. Older guy. Married to a woman who refused to have sex with him. And he was just kind of shit out of luck. And, if you think that marriage is going to be the antidote to loneliness and you rush into a marriage with the wrong person, you will be so much more lonely married to the wrong person than you ever would have been not being married at all. The myth of women and sex. I am inclined to think that a woman who is very attracted to a man, if he's a hypergamous choice for her and she's happy with him, you know, it's not like he's going to be wanting sex that she's not going to be wanting to also have with him. That being said, chemicals make a difference. Men have a higher sex drive overall. They get aroused more easily. They're stimulated more readily because men are visually stimulated, whereas women are psychologically stimulated. So a man looks at a hot naked chick and is like, ah, okay, I can do this. A woman looks at a man and, he might be a hot naked man, but it takes her a little bit of time to kind of rev up. So, I understand why a lot of people say, oh, a woman can be just as sexual as a man. Well, feminists say it because they want to think they can do anything a man can do. But honestly, I can also see a lot of people looking at it saying, well, my wife is in the mood anytime I'm in the mood. Like my husband. My husband could easily look at me and say, well, my wife is in the mood anytime I'm in the mood. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have that experience where it's like, well, yeah, women can be really sexual. And when it comes to getting the attention of that alpha male that we're attracted to, oh my gosh, we can be downright crazy. Um, but yeah, that's just from a chemical standpoint, as Tomassi says, it's a myth. Women can be fantastically sexual, but yeah, men have a higher sex drive than women do. I don't know why that's such a problem. Like, all you need is a girl to keep pace with you. She doesn't have to be like some sort of sex monster. I don't know, like, but I can totally see how people are always saying that. Oh, women are just as sexual as men, and I'm pretty sure it's the feminists who say it. Like, I would bet that primarily it's feminists who say it. It's like, I have to be just as sexual as men because I have to be just as much as men in everything. Like, I'm totally like I'm a super badass Marine sniper dude who also works as a fireman, and I can fuck 20 guys in a row because I'm exactly like a man, except I don't have a penis, which somehow makes me better. Yeah, that's your feminist thinking for you. They're wrong. The myth of the good girl. The good girl's game is built around playing to the quality woman mythos that men harbor. They want to believe she exists among a sea of vapid, self-absorbed sluts, looking to cash in before they hit the wall. She's not the prudish Madonna, and she's not the whore of Babylon. She's the cute good girl, somewhere in between. She's only an HB 7 to 8, not the demigoddess HB 9 plus. So she also emanates the tantalizing potential of attainability. Oh my gosh, that's me. That's totally what I did in strip clubs. Like, that was my sales pitch. Like, that was my shtick. When I was working in the strip club, I totally played that role. And in a strip club, you've gotta have your shtick. You've got to have your thing that you're selling. And so a lot of girls, they opt for just pure, straight, overwhelming, blows your hair back sexy. And so they come out and they're dressed in the most glittery, attractive outfit they can find. And they're constantly changing outfits and getting new outfits and trying on new outfits and clothes, which women do that anyway. But in a strip club where you're really, really trying to impress so that you can get your money, all of a sudden it's like, let's just put that clothing, let's get that clothes horse tendency on overdrive. And then tons and tons of makeup. And the makeup actually makes a little bit of sense because in a really dark club, if you're not wearing a lot of makeup, people can't see your face. Which, I mean, I knew about because I hardly ever wore makeup in the strip club. I was just, it's not good for your skin, and I didn't want to put it on and then have to wash it off, and I was too interested in, I had other selling points, and my other selling points were my athleticism. First thing a lot of people saw about me was my athleticism. There are all the pretty showy girls floating around in the room, and then they call me up on stage, and I end up doing things that people have never seen a human being do to their body before. And so I'd have people asking me, do you have bones? Or, is there something unnatural about your joints? Were you born like that, or did you have to learn? Um, no, I was not born like that. Yes, there is a condition that people can be born with that allows them to do that, but I had to learn it the good old fashioned hard way, which actually could be better because people with that condition have, accompanying conditions that can be somewhat unpleasant sometimes. But no, I mean that was my thing. Like I would go up on stage and I would be fucking impressive. And it was enough to catch people's attention, and I was usually having the time of my life on stage, and so I was always like grinning from ear to ear and just happy to be folding myself into a pretzel this morning for you, or this evening for you. And then I would get off stage, and then the second part of my sales routine would start up, where I would go bouncing up to some customer, and I'd be all happy and kittenish and playful. And I didn't have on the tons of eye makeup, and I've right now I feel like this urge to let you guys know that like I was 10 years younger back then. So, this is me post hitting the wall, I'm older now. And I also weighed considerably less, and I was incredibly fit, so I had a lot more muscle mass, which, anyway. So when you picture all of this, I don't want you all thinking that, I don't look the same. I don't look as good anymore. Let's just be honest. I don't look as good anymore as I used to. But once upon a time, I looked relatively good and cute and kittenish. So I'd go bouncing up to my intended prey, and I would be all cute and kittenish, and I would play the role of the cheerful, companionable girl next door. I was the good girl. I was the good girl. I would, I wasn't so good that it was like, okay, nobody would believe me if I claimed to be a virgin in a strip club. Like I have met girls who were virgins in strip clubs, but it doesn't happen that often. You know, not quite that prudish, and at the same time, you know, playful, not super super slutty. I didn't radiate sensuality outward. I was just kind of there and cute and playful and fun, and as he says, oh, that air of attainability, like wasn't I wasn't surreal, and I knew so many women who came out on stage looking surreal, and some of them could get away with it because they really were surreally beautiful, and it was just like, okay, she just walked by and everybody just had to take a moment and pause and admire her as she glided through the air. Like some women are that goddamn amazing. Me, I'm cute. I'll sit with you and talk with you as you drink your beer. And hey, do you want to buy a dance? They're only $25. I was fun and friendly and playful, and they seemed to really actually respond very positively to that. I made good money, and I made regular good money. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. There are too many guys out there in the world who probably fall for that illusion, because outside of a strip club where you know that I'm hunting you for your money, and I mean, it's designated hunting grounds. Everybody knows the game when they walk in the door. Well, they should. Everybody is responsible for knowing the game when they walk in the door. Outside in the everyday world, then you don't necessarily know that game. It's very easy, I think, for men to look at the good little church girl at, in their church and say, oh, she would never do anything wild. She would never do anything like that horrible, you know, anything like a stripper. She would never do anything like that. And either it's women lying to themselves saying they'd never do anything like that, or men lying to themselves saying that woman would never do anything like that. Oh, yes, she would. Because I'm married now. I'm a good little girl. I have totally done stuff like that. Anybody can. The myth of the biological clock. So, I remember when my biological clock started clanging at me. I had finally found a good man. I had finally, settled into an apartment with a good man. We had finalized the marriage. Everything was set up. We had enough food to eat. We weren't facing a famine. There wasn't an angry an angry enemy tribe bearing down on us, trying to kill us all. All the elements were in place. It was a good time to produce some offspring. Given the fact that I had the man whose genes I really, really wanted to pass into the next generation, like that man, I had him. Suddenly it was like, okay, I'm ready to have a baby. I think I was 26 ish, 25 maybe. I think 25 actually, because I met him when I was 23. Engaged at 24, married 25, 25. 25 or really early 26. And all of a sudden it was just like, I want to have a baby. I was terrified of getting pregnant. I was terrified of having kids. I was not raised around small children, so I didn't know what to do with a small child. I didn't know what to do with a baby. But I wanted one. And I remember, like, I got to the point where every time I had a period, I would just start crying because it meant that we hadn't accidentally got pregnant, even though I was actively working to avoid getting pregnant, and my husband was also actively working to avoid getting pregnant. Suddenly, I was hoping for some sort of mistake. And I remember, like, we had our anniversary, our first anniversary, and you pull out the old the top part of the cake that you saved. And I had wrapped it up. I researched how to wrap it up. I had mummified this piece of cake, like just layers and layers of saran wrap. I kept it in the freezer all year. I pulled it out and it actually still tasted pretty fresh and good, which was amazing to me. If you ever get married and you want to save the cake for the next year, research it on Google. They do have some really excellent methods of preserving a cake for an entire year. But we did that, and right away it was like, okay, I want to have a baby. And he's sitting there. He's like, are you sure you don't want to just wait a couple more years and have fun? It's like, no, I really need to do this now. Like, I really, really, really want this. Like, you have no idea how much I want this all of a sudden. I never ever wanted this before in my life, but now I want it. And I was, 25, 26. Suddenly I just didn't feel like I could wait any longer. It was like, I really, really, really need to get pregnant with this dude's kids. Which is funny to me because, I was still in peak fertility at that point, like relatively peak fertility. You start to kind of start rolling downhill at 30. Like, it's not an abrupt descent, but it does drop at 35. Like at 35, all of a sudden everything kind of goes downhill, but it still kind of goes downhill a little bit as you enter into 30. And that's what this essay is about. Like, this part of the chapter, it's about women think that the biological clock is like, oh, look, I hit 40 and now my biological clock is clanging. And so now I have to have a baby. And it's like, well, you really missed the boat on that one, didn't you, lady? Oh, I'm 32 and suddenly my biological clock is going out and going off and now I need to have a baby. It's like, again, you're cutting it too close. You know, the time when you should be having kids, unfortunately for women, is the time when you're at your peak fertility and you're at your peak beauty. The peak of your party years is the time that you should be aiming to get knocked up. Granted, the peak of your party years, given that it's a roughly 10-year span from 20 to 30, really is the time that you should be obtaining a mate. So first couple of years of those party years, look around, see what guys are out there, find the one you want, reel him in. And then in those later, the later half of your party years, that's when you should be getting knocked up. And that's what I did. I got knocked up as much as I possibly could get knocked up. 5 pregnancies later, I have 3 kids. I'm hoping to get a little bit more out of this reproductive system before the entire thing collapses on me. A lot of women out there are not doing that. A lot of women out there, they think that, 30 and the biological clock goes off and everything is nice. And he's got this quote that I love. All the haggard ghosts of feminism are cackling heartily around the cauldron of boiling good intentions in hell. If there were an actual biological clock, it was ticking its loudest when a woman was 22 to 24, not conveniently when she needs male provisioning the most, and when her sexual market value is in its declination by her mid 30s. Yeah, like you only have so much time in that period between the ages of like 18 and 29. And so like those first few years and really up till about 22, 23, like all the way up to 25 even, like you might just be looking for a mate. And that's where I was, 23, right in between 22 and 24. I was out looking for a mate and seeking a mate as much as I could. And when I found him, he wanted to take some time and bond and pair bond. And we don't necessarily live back in the era of, pre modern medicine. A lot of women died in childbirth. You've got to, a lot of kids died shortly after childbirth. So you got to have lots of kids because only a few of them are going to make it. We don't live in those times anymore. So he wanted to put it off by a few years. It's like, okay, let's put it off by a few years. And it's not like we didn't have fun during those couple of years. We had we had a lot of fun together. It was awesome. But no, the fertile years are when you feel it. And one of the things I've always wondered about, and this is just something that's always lingered quietly in the back of my head. Why are there so many feminist women that I've met who don't feel an urge to have kids in their 20s? And I've met them. And I always wonder if it's one of two things in operation. Well, one thing in particular that sits with me. Number one, the pill. The pill messes you up. And I think that the pill makes women less likely to want to have kids sometimes because it can basically, it simulates pregnancy. So they already think they're pregnant in some level or another. It's like, well, why should I want to have kids right now? I do wonder if that doesn't happen, and that's entirely speculation on my part. So I have wondered if the pill doesn't stop women being as urgent to have children as they would otherwise be. But there are also plenty of women who want to have kids who are on the pill and they stop taking the pill because they want to have kids. So maybe it doesn't affect anything. I just wonder about that sometimes. Like, does that affect things? And maybe we'll come to know later. In a few years when somebody does a study about it. But I always do wonder about that because the pill affects mate choice, which is huge, and I don't trust it because it affects mate choice, and therefore completely not something I can trust. After all, very hypergamous. I want the very best mate for me. If that pill is going to fuck up my ability to find the best mate for me, get that thing away from me. Number two, one other thing that I've always wondered about a little bit when it comes to women who don't want to have children, I've noticed that a lot of the women who I know who don't want to have children, not all of them, but enough of them, I don't think that they're married to men that they feel particularly hypergamously attracted to. That's me making a very broad-ranging assumption about a lot of other people's relationships that, obviously not everybody falls into that category. I know women who have health problems who looked at it and say, I do not want to pass this congenital illness onto my child. I'll adopt if I have to, but I don't want to do that. But I also just wondered, like, how many of these women don't want to produce offspring because the guy they're with just, my husband, with me and my husband, when I saw him and when I was with him, I wanted him to get me pregnant. I wanted him to pass his genes on with mine. Like, that was what I wanted. Still do. Other guys I met before I met my husband, the idea of getting pregnant terrified me. I didn't want to have kids with any of the other guys I met. There were a few guys that I was dating, in a more long-term capacity where I was like, well, if I get pregnant, I'm not going to start panicking because it's like, well, okay, I can live with this. I can live with the idea of reproducing with this guy. He's good enough. Other guys I dated, and I dated them very briefly and I broke it off very quickly. It was like, I can't stand the idea of getting pregnant with this dude. I can't have sex with him because if we get pregnant, I'm gonna lose my shit. I do wonder if maybe that's not one of the things that stops a lot of women. Now, part of it is probably also the party years. Spend your youth going out and riding the carousel and having a good time and doing whatever it is you want to do and traveling to foreign countries and exploring and learning new things and all these interesting things that you can do when you're young. And that probably distracts a lot of women from pregnancy as well. But I do wonder if it's not just that hypergamous drive, because when you meet that hot alpha male with that hot alpha genetics, you want him to knock you up. Like, that was my reaction. And I mean, just me, this is just my own individual experience. I wanted my husband to knock me up so bad. That's what I wanted. I wanted that. Like, I knew, like, it wasn't just a hey, he's sexy and I want to bang him. It's like, he's sexy, I want to bang him, and I want him to knock me up. Yeah. So so once we were married and everything was kind of in order, it was like, okay, immediately, let's just, you know, oh, but our finances, oh, don't you want to take some time and enjoy life? Like, no, no, I just want you to knock me up. I want you to get me pregnant. The myth of male looks. Looks aren't as important for women. In his section on priorities, which I'm going to have just open in front of me because I can, he's kind of divided women up into different age categories, and this is hilarious to me because I never got past category one. I met my husband at 23. I didn't look past that point, and so when he says 14 to 24 years old, looks are everything. Yes, some romanticism might help complete the fantasy, and game is definitely a factor, but the priority for arousal is primarily Darwinian. Yep, I remember those days. Women will gladly overlook character flaws or lack of assets in favor of fucking the physical alpha while she approaches her own sexual apex. Now, here's the thing that I think I differed from a lot of women in this category. I personally, and I mean, I knew all sorts of women who were all, they were in that age category and they behaved exactly as he's just described. For myself personally, I needed, I needed more. Like, I could get hot guys. That wasn't a problem. I could get physically, sculpted men. That was easy for me to do, very easy. And I didn't, most of the time. That wasn't what I was after. I was after what he mentions in category two. Category two, 25 to 30. Ambition, character, assets, humor, personality, etc. begin to be more important in the light of a potential lifetime commitment. That's where I was. And I wasn't I wasn't necessarily there because I was looking for provisioning potential. Well, potential. I suppose potential, but not even that. I wasn't nearly as interested in that. I was only 23. Provisioning potential was not on my radar at that point in time. Parental investment, however, was. I wanted a family. I wanted to have kids. Didn't care where the money came from, but I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have kids. And so, I knew that was going to be an issue sooner or later. It wasn't an issue when I was looking at him and thinking, oh my God, he's so hot and sexy. I want to have sex with him. But I knew it was going to become an issue. So it was on my list of things that I was looking for. And one of the things I noticed about my husband, and this was one of those moments of subconsciousness for me, where every once in a while something will just kind of come floating up out of the subconscious for me, and it will be like it will make some little statement. And I've had that happen to me several times, and usually it's something important that my subconscious is picking up on that I'm just not aware of at the forefront of my mind. So I'll be thinking about cats, and all of a sudden something will pop up at the top of my mind, and it's like, I wonder where that came from. One of the times that I heard that voice, I had just met my husband, and he was playing with one of my cats, and he was just this guy that I had met who had these really interesting things to say. We had these fascinating conversations. I really, really wanted to talk to him more. And he was playing with one of my cats because he had just walked into my apartment. And there was just this moment I was watching him play with a cat, and it was like, he would be a great father. He'd be a great dad. And it just kind of, it stopped me for a second. It was like, wait a minute, why am I looking at this guy and thinking about whether or not he'd be a good dad? Are we looking at him this way? Like, I didn't think we were looking at, are we looking at him this way? Because, somebody should have clued me in on the fact that I was weighing him up in that way, because I wasn't aware. But apparently some part of me was definitely measuring him up and looking at him and thinking, be a good dad for your kids if you ever have kids. Like, Jesus. I didn't see that coming. But the things he mentions here, things like ambition, yes. Character, yes. Assets, I didn't give a shit about. Humor, yes. Personality, yes. My entire goal in looking for a man, pretty much my entire life goal in the entire time that I was dating, day one all the way up to the finish line, I want a man who will not ever make me bored. I want a guy that I can spend the rest of my mortal life on this earth with, because I'm extremely monogamous. For all that I'm hypergamous, and for all that that's problematic for some of you guys, I am extremely monogamous. I want one dude, and I want him to cover everything. And I don't ever want to be bored with him, because if I get bored with him, it's just, my first boyfriend was the most boring person to me, and it wasn't that he was a boring man, it was just that I found him boring. And I didn't ever want to feel that way again, ever, because it was the experience of alpha widowing in just a little tiny slice, where I started dating this guy because he was the only guy around, and it was like, I guess this will have to do. This is what normal people do. They date guys like this, right? So I'm doing the normal thing. Oh my God, I hated it. I hated it. Couldn't stand it. I don't ever want to make that mistake again. I don't ever want to be stuck to a man that I'm bored with. So my big rule for guys was, if I think I'm going to become bored with this one, let's just toss him back and keep looking. And my husband, he is not a boring man. He has never been a boring man. I don't know if he even has boring moments. he's too damn interesting. Moving on to farther in this list. So 25 to 30 years, I can understand, because that's kind of what I was looking for. Ambition, character, humor, personality. That was what I was looking for. 30 to 35 years old. I'm 30 to 35 years old right now. If I had to go out looking for a man, I just wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'm married. If something happened to my husband, as much as I like to joke about, I'd find somebody else. I'm 33, I wouldn't. I'd probably just take my kids and be happy with the fact that he got me pregnant, and that we successfully had 3 children. Like, I'd invest myself in them. Like, the idea of dating is just, no. She's well past her expiration date, hit the wall, and is, graciously or not, accepting the fact that she's used goods. Oh my God. I am so happy I didn't have to deal with that. That sounds like it's not fun. Sounds like a pain in the butt. I'm happy I didn't have to deal with that. Like, he's not wrong. What he's saying is true. This is how it works for women. First thing I think when I read this is, oh my lucky stars, I'm so happy that I didn't have to deal with that. Oh, I would not want to deal with that. And again, if I ever found myself single again for any reason, I think I'd just not. I'd prefer to just be single and accept it. Like, I don't know. I might casually. No, I don't know. I can't imagine sleeping with another man after sleeping with my husband. Like, it's like the Greek god comes down from the heavens and you get to bang him, and then after that, it's like, well, I had Zeus. Where do you go from that? What else do you want? Can you really do anything better than that? Or, everything after that point is just going to be a disappointment. So, like, why bother? Yeah, but getting back to the actual meat of the chapter. What I find amazingly ironic is that looks are one of the few areas of change that a man has direct control over. Honestly, that's the reason I think that I'm so perfectly willing to tell guys, work on yourself, improve yourself, build yourself up, especially when you're in your early 20s, early to mid 20s. You don't have to rush out and find a girl. Work on yourself and build yourself up. Like that's what's important in your early to mid 20s, like, and really at any point in your life as a man, like just as a woman too, just keep building yourself up. um, you know, work on improving the person that you are. The reason I feel so comfortable and happy telling men that, like, and I know it must get tiring for a lot of guys who are like incels, who are struggling with relationships, who are struggling with women. It's like, why does everybody keep telling me that I have to improve myself when there are all these things that women are doing that are just plain unfair, that are, not good, that are putting me at a disadvantage. They're not playing a fair game. And the reason I'm always telling guys that is because you always account for the variables that you can control. If you have poor hygiene, fix it. It's directly within your control, so fix it. If you have a weight issue, go to a gym, work on it. You have direct control over it. Control the variables you can control for. Yes, there are women who cheat. Yes, there are hypergamous bitches out there. Yes, there are people who don't play fair game at all. There are women who are just downright sadistic out there in the world, but you can't necessarily control that. You can control yourself. And so invest time and energy in self-control. This is the variable that you have power over. So exert that power. Becoming a stripper. When I did that, I was out of shape and I lacked social skills, and I knew it. So I became a stripper. I went to a strip club. I danced every night until I got into fantastic shape, which I miss being in fantastic shape. And and I talked to guys every night because I needed social skills and I needed practice. I needed to control for the things that were within my realm of control. I couldn't control the fact that my dating pool was ridiculously small in my little tiny hometown. I couldn't change that. But I could make myself better and more attractive and more likely to be attractive to the kind of man that I was interested in if I ever found him. And eventually I did have to leave my little hometown, but when I did, I had already improved myself physically enough and, socially enough that when I did meet an attractive man, I knew how to talk to him, I knew how to flirt with him. I was pretty and visually stimulating to him. I had what I needed to interest him when I finally met him, because I had controlled everything that I could fix here. So then I very unabashedly tell men, well, improve yourself. I'm not saying that it's a magic bullet, that it's going to cure everything, but it's the variable you can control. And if you have something that's within your power to fix it. Because, you can't control the external world. You can't control what the world throws at you. You can control yourself. The myth of feminine sexual market value. Since men's sexual market value generally peaks around 38, women needed a social convention that would also make their sexual peak coincide with men's. Thus, we read the endless articles about sexual peak inflating older women's sexual prowess above that of the 22-year-old girl children men manifestly prefer for sexual partners. Working in a strip club, you can't have these kinds of illusions. Like, if you're a stripper, especially if you're a stripper for any length of time, you can't kid yourself about this stuff. Like, you can't. It's too obvious. We're all naked. Because I knew some fantastic looking exotic dancers who were grandmothers. They were grandmothers. I knew women who would get up and get on stage and get naked and have men throwing money at them, and they were grandmas. You if you go to strip clubs often enough, you sooner or later will see a naked granny, and you won't know it. And I mean, part of that is because, I mean, look at the industry. Woman gets pregnant in her teens, has a kid who happens to be a daughter. Daughter gets pregnant in her teens. Easy grannyhood at that point. But even women who are like in their 40s, it's not as uncommon as you might think. I don't know how many 50-year-old dancers I've seen, but all the way up to menopause, you can kind of pull it off. And perhaps, for all I know, there are women in menopause who've pulled it off. Like, it's amazing how some women really, really, like, if they're extremely fit and extremely toned, and, I've seen women who wear wigs. Like, I knew one woman, she was quite old for being a dancer. Excellent physical shape. She wore a wig because her hair just wasn't as thick and full as it used to be. Um, you still can pick up on it. Like, it's they even the very best of the best exotic dancers, we have to be able to look good naked. We can't hide it under pretty clothes. It's there. We can work on it. We can do everything in our power to create illusions. We can exercise like mad and keep ourselves as physically fit and toned as possible. And God knows I want to do that as I age. But you still can't hide. You still can't hide the ravages of time. You can't. You can't make yourself look as sexy as you were 10 years ago, which is what I mean, I understand that I'm not going to look as sexy as I did 10 years ago, but at least I'm putting effort into it. At least I'm trying, man. You do, you can't wind back the clock, and you know it. And I know it. And I always knew it. This idea that any woman would have, I mean, maybe I haven't been reading those magazines, and I know they're out there. I just never read them because I never cared. Um, I know that I am not as hot as I used to be 10 years ago. I'm not as hot as I was when I met my husband. And I even told him, like, we talked about it. We talked about it when we were dating. Like, I joked with him, like, just because of the way that human sexuality works, I'm going to be really, really super hot and sexy for you right now. I'm going to give you the best years that I have to give. 23, peak sexuality. The wild bunny sex, we can do it. But, there's going to come a day where your sexual market value is going to outpace mine. Like, I didn't use the term sexual market value because I didn't know the term sexual market value 10 years ago. But there's going to come a day where you're going to outpace me. There's going to come a day where you're going to be sexier than I am. And it's a fair exchange as far as I was concerned and as far as he was concerned, because he got to see me in my best years, and now I'm getting to see him in his best years. Um, but I can't ever see myself being so foolish as to think that me at 40 is going to be, as hot and as wild in bed as me at 23. I mean, I suppose, if I keep in good shape, if I keep my muscles turned, and you turn the lights down low, which God knows we turn the lights down low. I got a little candle over there that dim lighting. And candles are great. If, by the way, if you are aging and you want to hide stuff, male, female, if you just feel slightly self-conscious about your appearance, candlelight is magical. Use it. It will aid you in your quest for sexual satisfaction. I know I'm not where I used to be. I'm definitely not where I used to be. And the idea that I'm, somehow magically would hold on to that, it's so laughable. And women probably do believe this shit. I don't know why. I mean, it's a lie. It's just a lie. It's denial, straight out. That's not how it works. Of love and war, we want to relax. We want to be open and honest. We want to have a safe haven in which struggle has no place, where we gain strength and rest instead of having it pulled from us. We want to stop being on guard all the time and have a chance to simply be with someone who can understand our basic humanity without begrudging it, to stop fighting, to stop playing the game just for a while. So, funny story. When we first moved to this house, we were going through a really hard time. My husband was gone a lot. He worked many, many hours, and he had been working many, many hours for quite a few years. And he wasn't there, and I rarely got to see him. And when I did, he was exhausted and he was stressed out, and he didn't really have time for me. And we knew it was happening. Like when it first started up, he told me, "I'm not going to have a lot of time to be with you." And I told him, "Well, spend time with the kids, because I can understand. I can understand why you're not paying attention to me. They're kids. They're not going to be able to understand. So you have to, whatever energy you take home that you have to spend on your family, spend it with the kids. Be a good dad. Do that, and I'll be here and I'll hold on." And he was gone a lot. He was working a lot, you know, multiple jobs, crazy hours. He got through college. It was not an easy time for us, and I was at home alone with the kids all the time because I had retired from work. And we moved here, and he was just exhausted. And we think he might have been having some health problems on top of all that. It was just not a good time for us. And so we got home, and he was here alone, and he would go on business trips. And I tried to envision, like, we had this brand new house. I'd never had a house before. And I was trying to envision how to make it as warm and welcoming and comforting to him as I possibly could, because he'd come home and he would be just exhausted. And I wanted him to come home to someplace he could relax, someplace he could just stop being stressed out with work stuff and just exist and be and relax in. And so I had this ridiculous idea of some beach vacation spot, like the place that I probably should have like taken him to. Like, hey, let's just go on a vacation beach somewhere. You can lie under a palm tree in the sand, sipping bizarre concoctions out of a coconut, and something with alcohol. I don't know what people drink out of coconuts. Anything you want, just relax. Just have a place that you can be relaxed in. And so I started decorating the house with all sorts of beachy crap. I put there's a beach scene on that painting over there. That was a birthday gift. Like, I had some money, and I took my birthday gift and spent it on that. The pillow was on sale, and I saw it, and right away I was like, oh, it's a lobster. They belong on beaches. I started painting the walls to kind of match this more oceanic theme. The walls match the pillows, which you cannot see, but they do. I was very proud of myself for eyeing those colors and getting it just right. Um, I wanted this place, if you were to go around my house, which you can't necessarily see all of it from just the camera angles that usually pop up in my videos, but there are seashells and like right now I'm working on a painting of a crab that I'm probably going to make a little brief video and post about, just as a kind of a, hey, this is what housewives get up to kind of video. But like I wanted this place to seem like a place that you go to be on vacation. I wanted it to just bring to mind when he walked in the door this idea that, hey, you're not at work anymore. Just relax. Just take it easy. Put your feet up. I'll bring you some food. Just exist. Just breathe for a little while. Because he was working so hard, and he was spending so much time and energy at work, and he was traveling, and he was gone a lot, and he'd come home and he'd be exhausted. And it was like, I just want him to have a place that he can just breathe and exist for a while and feel peaceful. So yeah, reading this quote here, it's like that's what I was trying so very hard to create for him a safe haven, a place where he can just relax and be open and honest, a place where, a place where he has that. I wanted to make that for him. um, you know, and then Tomassi goes on, like this quote was from somebody who had commented, I guess, on in a conversation with him, but he goes on, there is no rest, there is no respite or reprieve from performing. And that's true also. That's also true and sad. We've kind of divided up the labor around the house in our family. Like, I'm kind of in charge of the domestic shit. Like, all the domestic stuff that needs to happen, I'm kind of there for. So if one of the cats pukes on the floor, you know, unless it's right in the way and he knows I'm going to like step on it and I'm asleep because he woke up earlier than I did. There are occasions, but generally speaking, it's like, "Oh, Barbara, by the way, there's cat puke on the floor. Can you clean that up?" Which it sounds so janitorial, and I think a lot of feminists are turned off by that janitorial aspect of it. It's like domestic stuff can very quickly seem janitorial in nature, can seem, you know, lowly or, beneath a woman in some ways. But at the same time, somebody's got to do it. And he's off at work all day. And it's like, I'm at the house all day manning the fort. And, if the cat vomits on the floor, I clean up the cat vomit because cats vomit all over the place. That's the downside of having cats. They're just pukey little creatures. If one of the kids, if one of the kids has a smelly diaper, he'll be like, "Hey, by the way, I think that one needs a diaper." And it's like, okay, and I'll go trotting off after that kid and chase them down, check their diaper, and if it needs to be changed, I'll change it. There's that division of labor. Like, I look at it, it's like he shouldn't have to do the messy, grungy stuff of fatherhood. He might as well. He works all day, and he works hard, and he works very well. He's very good at what he does, and so when he comes home, I want him to relax. I want him to feel comfortable. I want the house to be clean for him. I'm a horrible house cleaner, but I want that for him. So I try. I'm a really bad house cleaner, you guys, but I do try. That's what we do. That's what I think that's what women should do. If he works, and he does work very hard, he's constantly performing, he's constantly working. He puts a great deal of energy into doing his job and doing it well and earning enough money to support our family. It's a lot of work, and he does it. And I'm a stay-at-home mom. He does a fantastic job, especially in our generation, at our age. He's putting out all this energy, and it just seems it's very important to try to give him a space that is a haven for him. And it actually saddens me deeply that men don't have this in their marriages. Like, makes me want to cry. Honestly, it makes me want to cry. God knows I'm not perfect, and God knows I don't always have the house clean for him. I don't always have supper on the table for him when he gets home. I can't always tear the children away from the iPad long enough to get them to come to the door to say hi to him. But I try, because it's important, because he does have that constant burden of performance because somebody has to pay the bills. And the way we've divided the labor in the house, if I'm going to stay here and watch the kids, which is a full-time job in and of itself, and man the fort, somebody has to go out and earn the money. And if he goes out and earns the money, he's constantly in need of performing and working. That's just how the division of labor has fallen for us. And I think that was the way it used to fall for a lot of people a lot of the time. People talk about traditional housewives, they talk about traditional marriages, and it's like, well, 50s housewives, and this is something a lot of feminists point out and then laugh at without really processing it. 50s housewives, we invented the dishwasher, we invented the washing machine, we invented all these machines that made their lives so much easier, the vacuum cleaner. 50s housewives had a very easy time of it, and that's why when the 60s rolled around, the feminine mystique was written, and there was this idea that the housewives were bored and we needed to go out and excel in the labor force. And what we kind of failed to realize is that women do need something to sharpen their wits with. We do need something to keep our minds busy and active. Um, I think Tomassi actually talks about women being needful of intrigue. We need intrigue. We need drama in our lives. We need to get it from soap operas. We need to get it from men. We need to get it somewhere. I was never particularly interested in intrigue because I was always more interested in building shit. And building shit has taken up enough time and energy that's time and energy that I don't have it to give to intrigue. I don't care. I got my sexy man. I don't need any kind of interpersonal drama. Just, crawl into bed with me. Let's watch a movie and be comfortable. That's what I want. But, you know, old fashioned women, old traditional women. This is one of the reasons I got chickens. The old housewives of the area where I grew up, they used to man the house, and that was a full-time job in itself. And then you had kids on top of that, which was another full-time job. You know, you had to wash clothes by hand, which I washed clothes by hand. I did that for a while actually. It was difficult. It's very trying on the hands. It's very hard work. It's not necessarily good for the joints of your hands. It's very labor intensive to wash your own clothes because wet cloth is heavy and it's difficult to move around, and it's thick and cumbersome. And I would do that. I would wash clothes with my hands. We got the chickens, and I've been raising them, and I've been, collecting their eggs in the morning and making sure they have food, and slaughtering them when it's time to eat them, and skinning them, and gutting them, and preparing them, and cooking them. I do that because that's what traditional housewives did. Not necessarily this cutesy 50 stuff. We used to work too hard, and there was a division of labor, and the division of labor was more or less equal. Everybody puts in as much as they have to give because everybody needs to give 100% in order for this ship to keep sailing. And women have really lost that concept, haven't we? Women really forgot that one, didn't we? We entered the labor force and suddenly we're like, oh, well, I'm so busy off being a man that I can't necessarily bother myself with, forming a family, keeping the family afloat, division of labor, you know. But yeah, that initial quote about, just wanting a safe haven, honestly, it makes me want to cry. And it makes me wonder that, when Tomassi says women can't love men in the way that men expect them to love, my husband has to keep working. He has to keep performing. If we want to keep the family afloat, if we want to keep a roof over our heads, he has to keep working and performing. But I feel that I owe him something for that work. I owe him a safe haven to come home to. I owe him, a beach vacation. I owe him a place to relax and just unwind and exist and be. I feel that that's something I should, to the very best of my capacity, give to him and give back to him. And so it's interesting reading this chapter, this segment of the chapter talking about what love is for men versus what love is for women. But I should mention, I've had so many wonderful comments from guys. Like, thank you guys so much who've commented on this subject. What men's love is like versus what women's love is like. I've had some really, really fantastic comments, and it's really given me a lot of food for thought. And I'm still tumbling those ideas around in my head at the moment and trying to just figure out exactly what I think about this. I think perhaps modern women don't love the way women in other points in time have loved, more traditional women have loved. I'm discounting what Tomassi is saying here. Perhaps I'm just taking it off in some spurious direction, but I know that performance was not necessarily the basis of our love. Performance is there by necessity. We must survive. We must eat food. We must keep a roof over our heads. We must. And so according to the division of labor. I stay home, keep the kids safe, keep them from killing themselves, keep the house as clean as I possibly can, even though I'm a terrible house cleaner, cook the food. You go out and earn the money so that we can keep all these things that we have in our lives functioning. But, is the love is not there just because of the performance, and the love should not be there just because of the performance. And it frightens me to think that men think, just from reading this, that love is based on that performance, and that they need to somehow accept that and just move on from it. It's like, I struggle with that so much. I struggle with that idea so much. And instead of talking about it for another 10 minutes, I think I'm going to wrap things up. I don't know how long this video is because I've kind of clipped it into some segments so that I could get some voiceover stuff done, so that, excuse me, it's late again, to get some voiceover stuff done so that I can make sure that you guys have audio instead of just these clips with no audio with the words written on the screen. Somebody asked for that, and it seemed like a really reasonable thing to ask for, so I've been trying to do that. I've had so many wonderful comments from you guys, so what I think I'm going to do when we finally finish this book, because we're coming up on the end of the book, weirdly enough, which I think I had gotten enough into the book at this point that I didn't think there was an end in sight. It's like, well, it'll be another month before I finish Rational Male, and then I can start reading the next book. And just today I realized I've only got 1 week after this left, I think. Something like that. But I think after I'm finished with Rational Male, I'll do like a final thoughts video and answer a bunch of the questions you guys have asked me, because I've got some really, really awesome, thought-provoking questions. And one question from my husband, which I asked him about, and so we're going to try to get his answer as well, too. And then I got another book in the mail. And so, no surprise to anyone, it's The Mystery Method. I got that in the mail today. I ordered it. It arrived. I haven't had a chance to read it. I'm really excited about it. I do want to apologize because I didn't have very good options for this pull. Like, I'm probably going to do a pull as I approach the end of Mystery Method, which might be right away with Mystery Method. Like, I don't know how long I'm going to be reviewing the book. I want to spend enough time on that book as well that I can kind of cover the topics that I think are necessary to cover, but I'm not necessarily going to do it on a chapter by chapter basis. I'm just going to try to get the things that I notice, and do kind of, again, woman's reaction to this book. But I will come up with a better poll for you guys, because I realized, like, immediately the moment I pushed publish on that last video that, like, of the 3 options I had, like, Mystery Method, and then the other 2 options. The other 2 options were really girly and feminine, and, this is videos for women. And pretty much everybody who's watching my videos right now is a dude, so videos for women probably isn't good. I think those ideas, those videos at some point need to be made. I think those things need to be talked about, because there aren't enough women talking about what it's like to be a traditional housewife. There aren't enough women talking about, the ideas that drove feminism to take women out of the house. Like, oh, we need to go get jobs. Well, why do we think that? What the hell made us think that? A woman needs a career. What the hell made us think that? But, yeah, they're just, I didn't have a lot of particularly good book options. And I feel really bad about that. It's like, if you give a person 2 shitty options and then 1 good option, they're going to pick the good option. It's like you haven't given them any options at all. So I do apologize for that. Next time I do a poll toward the end of Mystery Method, I will try to find better, more interesting options for you guys. So that you can actually do a more legitimate poll than here. There's 1 option that actually counts for something, and then 2 that really don't. I didn't mean to do that. That was not my intent. It's just, that was all I could think of at the time. And it was kind of it wasn't like I rushed the poll. It was just all I could think about. And so lately, after I posted the poll, I felt bad about it. I've been spending most of this week trying to think of other books that I can read that would be more interesting and more more along the lines of what you guys are actually going to want to see. Um, but yeah, after this book is over, which is going to be sooner than I expected, I'll do a final thoughts video and talk about a lot of the questions you guys have asked, and then I will plunge into the mystery method, which I have sitting on this table, and I can't wait to crack the spine and start reading. Anyway, I hope you guys are all keeping yourselves safe and in good health, and I will talk to y'all later.